bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I now to fear? There entered 3 men who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as
officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night.
I smiled, for what had I now to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek was my own in a dream. The old man was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chambers and showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim.
Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart disrupts our versions of reality, even as we identify with it in ways that we might not care to admit.
True. Nervous.
Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been, and am, but why will you say that I am mad?
The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed.
Not dulled them.
Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in heaven and in earth.
I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad?
Hearken and observe how healthily.
How calmly I can tell you the whole story.
It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my mind.
But once conceived, it haunted me day and night.
Object there was none.
Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult for his gold. I had no desire.
I think it was his eye.
Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture. A pale blue eye, with a film over it.
Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees.
Very gradually.
I made up my mind to take the life of the old man,
and thus rid myself of the eye, forever.
The whole week before I killed him, every night, just at midnight,
I looked in upon him while he slept.
Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine.
Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph.
Think that I was there, opening the door, little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts.
I fairly chuckled at the idea. And perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch with the thick darkness, and so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door. I kept pushing it on, steadily, steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in bed listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the walls.
Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief. Oh, no. It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe.
I knew the sound well.
Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distress.
I say you it well!
When I had waited a long time without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it.
You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple dim ray, like the thread of a spider, shot from out the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye.
Eyes open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it.
I saw it with a perfect distinctness, all a dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones.
Yet I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct,
Precisely upon the damned spot. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but an over-acuteness of the sense?
Now I say there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound,
much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well too. It was the beating of the old man's heart, but the beating grew louder, louder! I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw up the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the walls. At length, it ceased. The old man was dead. I examined the body. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand on the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more.
If still you think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe to you the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head, and the arms, and the legs. I then took up 3 boards from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatsoever. I had been too wary for that. The tub had caught all. When I had made an end to these labors, it was still 4 o'clock. Dark as midnight.
As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what did I to fear? There entered 3 men who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as
Officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night.
I smiled, for what did I to fear?
The shriek
Was my own, in a dream.
The old man
Was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search. Search well. I led them at length to his chambers. I showed them his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim.
The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things.
But ere long, I felt myself growing pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But still they sat, and still chatted.
The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued to gain definiteness until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears.
Do not I grew very pale, and I talked more fluently with my voice. Sound increased. What can I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound. Much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton.
I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not.
I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key with violent gesticulation. I swore on the chair on which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards, but the noise arose overall and continually increased. Louder, louder, louder! Still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled.
They heard not.
Almighty God, no, I heard! They suspected.
They knew they were making a mockery of my horror.
This I thought, and this I think, but anything was better than the agony. It was more tolerable than this direction. Those hypocritical smiles no longer in a scream or die, and now again hard, louder, 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 louder! I